Few people know how hard it is for children to live in an orphanage. We can only guess what difficulties await them there. Little children are left without love, support, care, or attention. Children literally have to survive among their peers, constantly proving their strength and will. After all, there is no one to intercede for them. Dad will not come to punish the offender. Mom will not come to have a threatening conversation with the other mom. Children have to learn to independently solve their problems from early childhood. As a result, these children very often stop trusting adults. After all, their parents abandon them. Of course, it is very painful when parents pass away and children go to an orphanage, but it is much more offensive and painful when these parents simply cannot and do not want to take care of their children. In this video, I want to tell the story of one boy who, despite the fact that he spent his entire childhood in an orphanage, not only didn't lose faith in people, but on the contrary, always helped whenever he had the opportunity. 14-year-old Nick very early learned the injustice of life, mainly because his parents were always drunk and did not take care of their son. Nick was always left to himself, forced to get his own food. His parents were rarely interested in the health of their child, and soon they were deprived of parental rights. Once in the orphanage, Nick behaved very cautiously, observing others from afar. But after he got settled, his natural kindness prevailed. He turned out to be very sensitive and responsive. He always came to help when someone needed it. If he saw a girl crying in the corner, he would sit down next to her and try to calm her down. Most often, they just needed to talk about what worried them, and it became noticeably easier for them. Once in winter, after a slight thaw, severe frost hit, and the whole city turned into a solid ice rink. The authorities warned local residents not to leave their homes unnecessarily in order to minimize possible injuries. Nick left the orphanage that day to go for a walk. Near the store, the boy saw an elderly woman walking down the icy steps with a full package. She moved so slowly that the boy immediately decided to help her. But as soon as he took a few steps towards the woman, she fell down the steps with a loud cry. Everything happened so quickly. Nick was by her side in seconds and helped her to her feet. He began to collect the fallen products for her. The woman was breathing heavily and constantly rubbing her knee as it was apparently hurt on the ice. Without hesitation, Nick took the elderly woman under one arm, her package in the other, and politely accompanied her home. The woman did not even think to refuse. She was very pleased that such a polite and attentive boy offered her his help. All the way home, he told her various funny stories to distract her from her aching knee. The woman smiled, although it was obvious how much she really hurt. When they got to her house, she invited Nick in for a cup of tea. He agreed and very quickly carried her heavy bag of groceries to the 4th floor. When he was in the apartment, he was simply stunned by what he saw there. It was a huge 4-room apartment, all furnished with stunning furniture. There were beautiful paintings on the walls, and there were many books and various decorations on the shelves. The woman, seeing the admiring look of the boy, said that she had inherited all of this from her parents, and then she went to the kitchen. Pouring tea, the woman introduced herself. Her name was Elizabeth. She lived alone and suffered greatly from a lack of communication and attention. Nick also told her his story about his parents who drank a lot and because of whom he ended up in an orphanage. Elizabeth told him her long life story. As a teenager in the war, she was badly wounded and was told that she would not be able to have children. All of her life, she lived alone, never getting married. After the war, she learned to play the violin and even gave concerts traveling across Europe. That evening, they talked for a very long time, telling each other about their lives. Nick left the woman's house when it was already dark. She gave him various goodies so that he could treat his friends in the orphanage. As they were saying goodbye, they agreed that they would see each other again. Elizabeth invited Nick to come to visit her often. The boy was looking forward to their next meeting, feeling some kind of connection with this woman as if he had known her all his life. She, in turn, also became very attached to him, and even over time began to consider him as if he were her grandson. 3 years passed this way. Nick very often came to visit Elizabeth and helped her around the house. He did minor repairs, hung pictures on the walls, and carried heavy groceries. Their friendship was so sincere and they became so attached to each other that they no longer imagined their lives separately. Nick, for the first time in his life, felt needed and loved in a real family. Each time, Nick ran happily to Elizabeth's house when he wanted to tell her some good news or share his sadness. The woman also told him about all her experiences, as he was such an understanding listener. One day, Nick, as usual, went into the store for milk and bread and went to Elizabeth to tell the latest news of the week. When he approached the entrance, an unknown sadness touched his heart as if he felt something was wrong. Having arrived on her floor, he rang the doorbell, but no one answered. He started knocking on the door, shouting the woman's name. She could not have gone anywhere, as she always waited for him on Saturdays. A neighbor came out to his loud knocking and shouting. She told Nick that Elizabeth had passed away the night before. Nick could not believe it because she was full of strength and health. He refused to accept this news. The neighbor had a key to her apartment. Nick entered the house. It was so empty without Elizabeth's laughter. He quietly sat down on the sofa and wept bitterly. The neighbor, who was standing nearby, said that the woman passed away in her sleep and did not suffer. They even found her in her bed with a smile on her face. Nick could not recover from this shock. The only close person in his entire life left him quietly without even saying goodbye. He went home, leaving the bag of groceries for the neighbor. All the way to the orphanage, he walked and quietly sobbed from the tremendous melancholy that settled in his heart. The woman's funeral was attended only by Nick and a few neighbors. Afterwards, the woman's lawyer contacted Nick and told him shocking news. It turned out that Elizabeth bequeathed all her property, including her 4-room apartment, to Nick. The boy was amazed. He did not expect such a gift from the elderly woman. He had no idea what to do now with this huge inheritance. Time passed. He sold the large apartment and bought himself a smaller, cozy 2-room apartment. He transferred the difference from the sale to the orphanage where he grew up, as he wanted to help children who, like him, were left without parental love and affection. Now Nick is 25 years old. He got married and they have a beautiful daughter who they love very much. He tries to devote all his free time to his family because he knows perfectly well how important it is to have a loving family. He also regularly visits his orphanage, visits his teachers, and helps as much as he can. He often tells his wife and daughter about one wonderful woman, Elizabeth, who so suddenly appeared in his life and spent 3 unforgettable years talking with him. This is how 3 short years brought 2 people together, brightened up their loneliness, and helped each other in moments of sadness. Who knows how the life of one orphaned boy would have turned out if he had not helped the lonely woman that winter. Friends, what do you think about this story? Be sure to share your opinion in the comments. Click like and subscribe to our channel.